Welcome to an invitation to sisterhood. We want you to join us on a journey as we discuss everyday issues affecting our lives. Women in the Bible and of Christian history continue to have an impact on the world even years after their deaths. We can learn so much from them. They are sisters of inspiration, and we're all sisters in Christ. Today we're talking about the life of Meghans Salter and her miracles. Our guest is pro-life speaker and Meghans' mom, Ellen Salter from Meghans Miracles. Our sister of inspiration for the show is St. Therese of Lisieux. I'm joined by my co-host, ECRC Director, Patrice Buna. So when we think of pro-life, Patrice, we typically think of abortion, right? But pro-life expands so much more than that. It's really about valuing life.
At every stage.
At every
stage. From infancy to old, like elderly or anyone with disabilities, anything like that.
From inception to death.
Natural death.
Yeah, natural death.
Yeah.
So, and we sometimes forget, we're, the pro-life movement in terms of stopping abortion is so important.
Yeah.
But valuing life is so important. I remember there was a story in the news about a family celebrating the euthanasia of a man who was diabetic and was going to have his leg cut off. Instead, he chose to die.
Instead of getting a leg amputated?
Instead of getting a leg amputated, he chose to die. And they were celebrating it. Celebrating, they had a euthanasia party.
That's crazy.
And it's so sad because he didn't see the value in his life. He didn't see, that we're all going to suffer in life. It's like this inability to accept suffering and binding it with Christ. Instead, we choose not to go that route and we choose to give up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've heard that about the pro-life movement in general, is that when you stop valuing life at inception, then it's a slippery slope. Yeah. Then you start to say, well, what about in this case? What about this case? What about this case? And, oh, well, I'm old, or this person's in pain, or this person's on life support, and you never know. And it's not about our decision, because if me and you are the ones making the decision, it's about God's time, and when it's naturally their time to go.
Well, now we're promoting post-birth abortion. So a baby's born, and now they're going to decide if a baby survives an abortion. Now they're saying, well, it's up to the doctor and the parents to decide whether that baby should live. So that's not murder.
Right.
We have gotten to the point in this world that it's really a scary place.
It is, yeah. And I was doing some research on the pro-life movement because I always like to just stay a little bit educated, because I feel like we live in a little bubble sometimes of everybody's pro-life. Yeah. So let me read what the other side is sort of saying. And there was this article written from a firsthand perspective from a woman who aborted her baby late term. I'm talking 35 weeks, because her baby was just going to be so severely disabled. She's like, it was the hardest decision I ever had to make. She's like, people say, oh, you're a baby killer, you're a murderer. And she's just like, it was the hardest decision because I could acknowledge that she was a mother. I could acknowledge this was her baby, but just couldn't take that last step of having this baby with such severe disabilities that the baby would be in pain, crying all the time. And her as a mother, she felt like it was the merciful thing to do, was to have an abortion that late. So she had wrote this firsthand perspective, and I saw that and I was like, well, I could see how people would say that and be like, yeah, that was a merciful killing. So I'm interested to talk to our guest today, Ellen, to see her perspective, and having a special needs child and keeping that child and raising that child, and what sort of graces
Ellen
can come from that.
didn't know in utero the baby was going to have issues. Ellen and her husband discovered this a couple months after Megan was born, that she had issues. But even the world we live today, I mean, it's going to come to the point they're going to say, well, she's 2 months, so okay,
right.
Why have her live?
Yeah, let's euthanize her.
Euthanize her. And so we have gone down a very slippery slope. And I'm not discounting the pain of a mother who knows her child's not going to be normal. But then we're taking life in our own hands instead of leaving it up to Christ, who is the ultimate decider of when we live and when we're born and when we go.
Yeah. And I think that our society, too, is glorifying abortions so much. Like, I'm happy with my abortion, people holding up signs.
Oh, they have abortion days.
I'm proud of it, and I celebrate my abortion and all of these things. And I think it's just painting this picture that it's true freedom for a woman to make that choice to kill her own child in utero, And I think that they're completely missing that whole other side. I saw a statistic the other day, and it's like 60-some% of women that have an abortion regret it, or had suffered depression, or all of the things that come after it.
Well, they don't tell that story because they don't want that to be known.
Right.
They don't want to tell take the religion out of it, take the faith out of it, just the medical perspective of it, the increase of depression, the increase of suicide, the increase of cancer. I mean, there's so many, and if the pro-choice side truly cares about choice, right, and letting the women choose, why wouldn't you arm her with all the information so she can make a really educated decision? Right. I mean, if we have choice, isn't it really choice?
It should be.
It's so it's so contradictory in their movement, and then what about protecting the most vulnerable? So it's about your life, your body, but what about that child who doesn't have a voice? I mean, and it's like they're totally disregarding that child.
Right. And 100%. And I think that goes right into our saint of the day, Saint Therese of Lisieux, which I love that Ellen chose it. I love when our guest chooses our saint of the day, because you know there's like a connection there too. And I think for Saint Therese to have been so simple in her ways, so simple in her prayers, simple in her faith, and I think that totally reflects, you know, sort of the life of Meghan. And
it's about the little flower, you know, saying the little flower. And so Ellen will elaborate for us on that and why she chose Saint Therese of Lisieux and her beautiful daughter's story. Meghan and Ellen came to my daughter's school.
Yeah, you mentioned.
It was so beautiful, and my favorite part is when she had the children whisper in Meghan's ear a prayer, like what to pray for them, and because Meghan prays every day, and Meghan's saving souls, and she has a purpose, and I just loved it. I'm going to cry just thinking about that line of those children.
And that's in elementary school, right?
Yeah,
so
in elementary school, K through 8. And just think those kids in line, just whispering in her ear, it was just so powerful. And, you know, and in a time that we live in a world that there's a country and we were talking about this offset, I can't remember the country, but they want to mandated killing, aborting any baby that is Down syndrome. They don't want any Down syndrome children in their country.
That's such a shame.
And they don't understand that every life has purpose. Every life has value. And it just, we've gone down a scary path in this country. And, you know, we got to pray. That's why we need prayer warriors out there, because pro-life is just not about protecting a baby in the womb, it's protecting all life.
Yeah, and I think it's back at our last pro-life episode where we talked about it's about prayer and fasting, and also about doing. So there's one thing to you know, pray. It's important. If this is what you're called to do, to pray and fast for life, then do that, and then other people are called to be those soldiers. So,
and we're going to hear the story about Meghan, who physically can't do, when we think of the word do, she can't do what we can do. She can't walk. She can't talk. She can't breathe on her own. She can't eat on her own. But she has a purpose, and she's saving souls, and that is so powerful. Her life has value, and that is a message that every life has value. And it's a message that we can't stress enough. We just pray to God that this show, you know, moves people and saves souls, and her ministry and everybody in the pro-life movement. And Ellen's a pro-life speaker, and I love the fact that she's a pro-life speaker from a different perspective.
Yes, I agree. And I'm interested to see really her perspective. Like I said, I read that article about this woman who killed her baby because she didn't want it, you know, and so I'm interested to see Ellen's perspective on raising a child like that, you know, and having other children, how it changed her life, how it changed her whole family's life.
Yeah, and she has other children. So we're excited to talk about Ellen, and she's coming on in the next segment. So stay with us, everyone. We're going to continue this conversation with our guest, Ellen Salter. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Invitation to Sisterhood. Ellen Salter is our guest. She's a pro-life speaker whose greatest passions in life are serving Jesus and defending every soul's right to life as a gift from God. Ellen's daughter, Meghan, has an undiagnosed medical condition which renders her unable to eat, speak, move, or breathe on her own. Meghan, who wasn't expected to live past 6 months, is now 16 years old. Joining us now is Ellen Salter. Ellen, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I had the pleasure of meeting you at my daughter's school. I was telling Patrice in the last segment, it was such a pleasure to have you and Meghan and your family there. And what moved me the most, I loved your talk, your pro-life talk, but Meghan with the children just moved me. Watching those kids whisper in her ear, and I was so moved on how much she impacted those kids. Was that a surprise to you? And when you go speak and you see children react to Megan?
You know, they always react in a very special way. The children, I have a very special love in my heart for children. And, you know, I remember when the group came in and, you know, I spoke from kindergarten through eighth grade.
Yeah.
So it was a big span. So I gave 4 talks in one day, the children. And you kind of watch them kind of melt in their chair after they see Megan wheeled in. And I can explain to them that their gifts are so important and they're all gifts from God. And then Megan, of course, if you were to look at her very still existence in her chair, one would think she doesn't have a gift. So I was able to explain to the children that every gift, every soul has gifts. And you can't replace any one person because we're so uniquely created by God. And so that really encouraged the children to trust that each child, each person, each classmate is a gift from God, and we need to treat everyone like that.
I love that because I remember like my sister was listening to the radio with her kids in the car, and they're elementary, middle school age, and they said the word abortion, and they're like, "What's abortion?" And she's like, you know, like didn't know how to answer. And so I think it's important you can explain to a child what abortion is, and to them they're just appalled by it. What? But I think it goes a little bit further when you explain the value of life at such a young age. Kindergarten through 8th grader, understanding this value of life, they're forever going to have Megan's image, you know, in their mind. And they're going to know as they get older, they might encounter a teen pregnancy. They might encounter, you know, their wife or themselves is pregnant with a sick child. And they're going to remember all of that from such a young age. I think it's so powerful because then they understand the why. It isn't just this, you know, indoctrination of, oh, we don't kill babies and we're Catholic and we're pro-life and, you know, blah, 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 and all these words. They're actually able to connect it to a message and a person. I think it's
very
huge.
visual to be able to bring her and to allow the children to whisper prayer into her ear. And that's really part of her mission in life, is to bring prayers to Jesus Christ. And she can do that by answering or listening to prayers and offering them to the Blessed Mother and to Jesus to hopefully answer those prayers.
So tell us about Megan's story. We want to share that with our viewers today about how you first discovered something was wrong. She was born normal.
She was born normal, although a few years prior, praying in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Every time I entered the chapel and prayed in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and it quieted my heart. I heard the Lord and Blessed Mary ask behind my right shoulder if I would accept a special needs child. And resounding yes. I actually felt very humbled and very honored that they would ask me to do that. And I didn't really honestly think much of it. I just thought, oh my gosh, I don't feel worthy, but I will take the child that no one wants, the one that would end up in abortion, the one that no one wants to be a mother to. I'll take that baby. But then she was born healthy, and you know, life moved on for a few weeks, and then her airway collapsed at home, and that's when our journey began. So she's had many flights to the local hospital, and she currently is undiagnosed. She's 16 years old. She's on full life support, which means she has a ventilator breathing for her because she is so weak. Her muscles can't breathe, and she has a feeding tube. I've never heard the word mama. She's never spoken, and you know, she can't move any part of her body except she can smile. And she can hear, and we know she can see and feel touch.
So you have told the kids, and you've told me that Megan is saving souls. And for somebody who can't speak, who can't move, who can't eat, who can't even breathe on their own, help us understand how that's so. How is she saving souls?
That is a beautiful question. Thank you. We know that from deep surrender and deep prayer, and how I'm able to journal the words that the Lord has shared with me on really what Megan's mission is in this world. She looks so different than the rest of us. She's so beautiful, but very still. And so if you reflect upon Christ on the cross and his very still existence and Megan's very still existence, from the crucifix, the Lord didn't speak many words, very few in the Bible. Megan doesn't speak. He didn't eat from the crucifix. His food was his God, much like Megan. And when I reflect upon the crucifix and I reflect upon our Jesus who laid his life down for our sins and then you have a still little existence, that people are sending prayer requests from around the world to meghansmiracles.com. And then we read these prayers to her, and so often we get praise reports, and people are coming back to the church. There have been healed marriages. So we receive that right from other souls that are suffering and that can relate to suffering, even though her suffering is much different than perhaps someone else's suffering. That redemptive suffering is, yes, looking at the cross, acknowledging that I'm a sinner, and laying my life down, and the family lays our life down. And it's really a beautiful grace that we have this little child who's much like a saint living in our home, that we are able to care for, and she's laying her whole life down. And the Lord has, given me much words of encouragement, and, has really revealed to me why she can't speak, and some of these things that we might be able to get into in this segment. And certainly with pro-life speaking, I'm able to share in depth some of the times that the Lord has appeared to me and giving me words of encouragement and knowledge of really what she's doing in this bed, which is much more than we can see with our eyes.
What's been the experience? I know we had on last season a mother who had a son with autism, and how that affected the other children in the home. What has it been, for your children? So how old are your other children?
So we have a daughter 25, son 22, and another daughter 20. And we've just rallied around. The Holy Spirit really spoke to me when Megan was first ill. And I just told the children right off the bat that they've been chosen to be her older sister and her only brother. And we've been chosen to parent. And God could have chosen another family, but He chose us. So we don't want to let God down.
Instead of like, this is a burden, we have to deal with it. It's like we were chosen.
We were chosen.
And even the way you answered the Lord when He told you before you even got pregnant, you were humbled. I mean, a lot of people would see it the other way around, where they would see this, a special needs child as a burden, and for you to see this.
We are very humbled, and that was the only sentence I said. And they, some of the critics to what we're doing, not everyone agrees with having someone on life support, or that she has any value at all. And we've been attacked many times by many different professional people and people we run into out in the world, and we with charity defend her life, and really gives the opportunity if someone comes up and says something, because I feel like they not only attack Megan, but they really attack God. And God has given me a voice, and I want to use my voice to bring others to the cross and to show others the joy in suffering. We have great joy, we have great laughter in our home, and hope, and many friends that have helped carry our cross with us.
That's amazing.
You have to pray for those people. You're sad for them because they just don't get it. They don't get the value. They don't get Megan's purpose. And when you say that, when we talked about saving souls and why she can't speak, can you share that with us? Like, why can't she speak? What is it that, why that suffering?
Right. I asked the Lord years ago, one day when my husband had taken the other three out for a little ice cream, and I had some quiet time to pray, and I was rocking this little baby, making sure she didn't turn blue before Daddy got back. And very raw suffering we're talking about here. And I asked the Lord, I said, Jesus, why can't she speak? Why can't I hear her? I could help her in a more
At least hear
deeper
what
way,
she could
know
tell
what
what's
she
wrong
needs.
with you. Yeah.
And He said, Ellen, used my name and said, Ellen, you are not privileged to know what she knows.
Wow.
So that began my journaling of, what are you doing, Lord, with this child of God? And so He's been able to share with me and really appear to me that day. He appeared with the Blessed Mother and St. Joseph and Father Solanus in my home. And the Blessed Mother, I asked her to wrap her mantle around me and our family, because I felt I was falling from fear. And I thought if I fell, I wouldn't get back up physically, emotionally. And I wanted her to hold me. And I asked St. Joseph to guide my husband, to be the pillar of the home, and to guide our family and our children, to hold him, to be, he needs to be the man of the home. And so he gave up working, and I haven't worked in 25 years. I take care of her. and lived off love, literally. And St. Joseph has carried him, and we invoked Father Solanus, and I felt like I had given them jobs kind of to help us.
Yeah.
And when it came to Jesus Christ, he was standing in my living room, and he walked over to me. And I said, "What do you want of me?" I turned the table. I offered. I surrendered. I said, "I'm here, Lord. What do you want of me?" And he leaned over and he took my hand, and there were two of me. There was one walking with him and one sitting in a chair rocking a baby to make sure she didn't turn blue. And his only words to me were,
We
"Ellen,
need tissue on this.
I want you I want you to walk with me." And I have felt his hand, his big, huge hand in my hand for all of these years. And he showed me without words a journey. I wanted the end of the journey if she lived or died, and he wouldn't show that to me. It was trust. And that's where I began learning about trust. Another time.
What a powerful message for all of us. Sorry to cut you off, Ellen, because surrendering, I think, is so hard for so many of us. I'll be the first to say it's hard for me because we all want control. And that's part of her purpose, right? To teach you to surrender, to teach others to surrender, to teach through you, we learn the importance of surrendering, right? Because we're not supposed to know everything. And the fact that Jesus said to you that, it's like he's saying that to all of us. You don't need to know everything.
No, just
And you're
trust.
not privileged to know what she knows. I mean,
Yeah.
then you're like, well, what does she know? Like you get more curious.
Yeah.
You're like, wow. And I just, it's powerful to even think that. Then you look at her with this, wow, so she probably really is in union with the Lord.
She is in union with the Lord.
100%.
There is a feeling in her room, in her home. People come in, they said, it's so peaceful. Like there's just this, we know the Blessed Mother is in her room always. We know she stands right behind Christ. She's got some guardian angels, some angels I know that are in her room. One story that's really important with the pro-life movement, to go quickly into, we were at a mass, and it was a healing mass, and she wasn't healed, and I had all this anticipation of a healing. And I asked the Lord even to have her squeeze my finger, or focus her eyes a little, or give me a smile, or be it his will, she step out of her chair. And after she was not physically healed, I cried, and I was mad at Jesus. Sorry, but I was. And I looked at her, and he appeared behind me, and I could see him behind me, and I could see Megan at the same time. He leaned into me, and he leaned my body to where I was like touching her face, and he spoke to me at my moment I needed him the most, and he said, "Megan, I love you just the way you are." Wow. He came to me when I needed him most. And from that point on, I realized, unless I've heard it wrong, she won't be healed, or at least right now she's not. And if we reach out and we love each person for who they are and not what they can do for us that this world teaches, if you can do something for me, you're my friend.
Right.
It's the opposite. What can I do for you? So if we can love each person, if the children that I go to, the parishes, the conferences, I've spoken over 100 times. Love each person for who they are and not for what they can physically do in this world or what they can bring the world.
What can you share with our viewers about redemptive suffering and understanding what that is? Because this is truly redemptive suffering. So share with our viewers that.
Well, what I would like to say is I know everyone hurts. And it's almost like not when you'll suffer, if you'll suffer, it's when you'll suffer.
Yeah.
And we don't walk through this earth without some type of suffering, and Christ suffered for us. So redemptive suffering for me and my perspective is that when I was so filled with fear and I was really laying in a bed and a local priest kept calling my husband to see if she's standing yet. So I was either there or falling on the floor. I was having a hard time walking. I was so filled with fear. I needed to learn peace and I needed to learn surrender. And redemptive suffering for me is focusing on the prize, focusing on Jesus Christ, letting his eyes gaze upon me, knowing that I'm a sinner and asking for forgiveness, and the sacraments, going to the sacraments frequently, and offering, surrendering to Jesus Christ, who will then give me the fruits and the gifts and his mercy and his forgiveness to help me stand up each day and to walk this walk. I never expected to be a pro-life speaker. I was a quiet pro-life speaker baking cookies for the sale. And now I'm thrust into traveling the world. I've been all over traveling, and I want to teach young and old the value and the dignity of life. And we do not kill the unborn, but we also don't euthanize a child or anyone with special needs. And in our world right now, it's a throwaway world. We're seeing euthanasia on a rise. And my pro-life work, like you mentioned, is, of course, we start with abortion, we start with life, to choose life. But what happens when someone's born that isn't healthy? We don't dispose of them.
Or even they're not born healthy, like this man who was having his leg amputated because of diabetes. It's like, then he's saying, well, my life is not worth living now because I'll have one less leg. I mean, what a horrible message.
And what would you say to that woman? Because that article I read, I was telling Vanessa about it in the first segment. This woman found out, later term in her pregnancy, I think she was over 35 weeks, that her baby was going to be very severely disabled and probably be crying in pain its whole life and wouldn't live to any significant age. And so the mom decided to have an abortion. She's like, it was the hardest thing I did. So she had acknowledged she was on a different part of the abortion, perspective. She wasn't saying, this isn't a life, it's my choice. She recognized it was a baby. She had a nursery, she'd had a baby shower, but she just decided to do the merciful thing. And there was another testimony in the same article from a similar mother that aborted her child for a similar reason. What would you say to someone that's in that situation that, you didn't know, she was already born, but to someone that maybe knows?
Right. First of all, being that she's Catholic, to go to confession and to really know, and I'm sorry for the story, I'm sorry for her pain, and to really go to confession and to get counseling, attend a Rachel's Vineyard retreat, and really begin to heal her heart. As hard as it was and is, this will last a lifetime, and I will keep her in my prayers and pray for healing for her. Yeah. And just sorry that someone wasn't there. If I could have helped her. And I do reach out to people around the world, helping people in all different situations. They can email, of course, megansmiracles.com. And I wish I had the opportunity to help her and share the joy and suffering and the gift every soul brings to the world.
Yeah. That's important to recognize that.
So, Ellen, you picked St. Therese of Lisieux for us as our sister of the show today. Tell us why you picked her.
From the time I can remember, my mother taught me about St. Therese, and I know every story about her. I've read all of the books that have been written about her. She has a favorite, my favorite quote is on the back of that card, and it reads, "Because I was so small and weak, Jesus stooped down to me and taught me the marvels of his love." And I think that really mirrors Megan. I took her name as a confirmation name, and Megan chose her as a confirmation name. That mirrors Megan so much. Megan is living a cloistered life, much like our sweet little St. Therese. She didn't speak much in the cloistered convent. Megan doesn't speak much. She suffered greatly. Megan has suffered. Megan is not in any pain, just to clarify that. She is the most joyful child you'd ever see. And so St. Therese is simple. I love her simple. I have a very simple mind. So her simplicity, her holiness, her devotion to Christ, and how she truly surrendered. She's just a model that I can pray to and look to help me in the hard days, to give me the joy in simple things in life. So that's why I love her so much. And she looks like Megan.
She does.
Physically resembles Megan.
She does.
So the Lord has
And she looks
revealed
so
to me
peaceful.
how beautiful,
Look how beautiful
the reflection is.
Little girl.
She's a beautiful girl.
Yeah. She does look like Megan.
She is my very favorite saint.
Yeah, she is so pretty.
Yes.
So, and it's so important that we all have saints for intercessory prayer. We all need strength and guidance. And I love the fact that you said, Mary and Jesus and saints are in Megan's room. Because it's such a powerful message for anybody struggling to know that we can call on these saints for strength, for prayer, and to help guide us through these moments of suffering, not if, but when we suffer in life, when we go through these tough times. And this is a long journey for you. This is 16 years.
This is 16 years of this journey.
And they said she wasn't going to live past 6 months.
That is correct.
What do the doctors say to you today?
Medical mystery.
Really?
They have searched for a diagnosis. Many hospitals have searched for a diagnosis, and they can't find a diagnosis, so she's a medical mystery. So we have an apology letter from one hospital that stated that this beautiful family and this beautiful child, that they were sorry that they had nothing to offer.
Wow.
To offer to us.
And can you tell our viewers today how she has helped people convert to the faith, change lives? You have a sort of a firefighter and other people, so can you share that
I
with
would
us?
love to. Thank you. She receives prayer requests off meghansmiracles.com, so that's kind of worldwide. As far as the
And
local,
you read those prayers to
I
her.
read every email that we receive, which is almost daily. There are times I receive 20, 25 a day. So she's known, and that's her ministry, to pray, to offer these prayers. And then we've had a few local gentlemen, one being the fireman that came to rescue Megan when we called 911 the very first time. And he came to rescue her and kept visiting our family and asking questions about the Catholic faith. And he said, how do you have joy when your child is so critical? And he didn't understand it. And he said, if you don't mind, can I keep coming back, and can I bring my family? And I have questions, So we're like, bring them on. So, questions, do I have to go to church every day or every week? At minimum, yes. And so we started with this journey. He became Catholic. So praise God, I wrote in his confirmation card that he came to save Megan's life when we called 911, but through the intercession of God, Megan saved his life and brought him to the faith, and he's a beautiful soul. And my best friend from high school, her husband wasn't Catholic, and there was an evening that he was very moved that they had a benefit for Megan, and he broke down on the dance floor and accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior, and then made the commitment to join the Catholic faith.
That's amazing.
And we've had a lot of emails, return emails, praise report, emailing us back to say, our marriage is better, or, this area I'm struggling in, this addiction is cured, and thank you, and thank Megan. So then we get to firsthand see the fruits of the Lord's work through the intercession.
And what would you say to somebody that might say to you, okay, well, you, Ellen, you seem like a very holy woman. You are called to deal with this. You are called to take on this type of redemptive suffering, but I'm just not strong enough. I can't do it. What would you say to that
That's a great
person?
question. Thank you. Well, you can't do it is my answer. And the reason is because I can't either. Every gift comes from the Lord. I was clearly not equipped. Now, when I look back at my life when I was a little girl, I knew something would come with the Lord, and now I look back and I can see He was preparing my heart. I'm not worthy. I can't do it. I have to depend on the grace of God. So that person that might say that would be in the same boat that I'm in. There's days you feel like the boat is sinking, but He lifts you up.
He doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called.
He equips the called.
Yeah.
And it's His graces. I didn't know what a grace was until I started suffering. And, my spiritual director had to teach me what grace is, and I still don't know that I know. It's been many years, and He brings you the peace when you surrender and you just let God have your life. He brings you all the gifts that you will need. So then He equips you. I'm ill-equipped, believe me.
And I know you speak in all many different churches and organizations and schools, but you don't always take Megan with you because it's too difficult. So having her at St. Fabian was kind of a rarity, right? Right?
That is correct. That is correct. Locally, I could take her if the weather is nice and it's not too far.
Okay.
Other than that, we do have a video that we show.
Yeah.
And there's not a dry eye in the house.
Oh, I know
when I'm done.
The video, I was already crying before I even spoke.
I've had
Plus, you have
people
one of my
running
favorite songs on that video.
Yes, yes. I've had people running companies, CEOs, like almost falling out of their chair with tears.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful. It's a very unique story.
Yeah.
And I feel God is calling me to journey out of my comfort zone. Pro-life speaking was not my comfort zone, but I would be honored if anyone viewing this would be, able to bring me out, and I can travel because Mike's job, he can work from home.
And it's such an important message because there are a lot of people who, are different in this world, or not what we consider maybe not totally healthy, but they have to find their own value in life. And I think you have such an important message, just not for that person, but the family who is dealing with a child or somebody with a disability, and whether they're born with a disability or ended up with a disability after birth, and how you show that value and maybe search for what is God's calling them to do, and their purpose. And you clearly know Megan's purpose is she's saving souls. I just love that. But everybody has purpose. So is that part of your message when you speak to people, is to find their purpose?
Absolutely, to find their purpose. And there are people that, email or come to me or call me, and they are still searching at an older age. And I'm able to help people, and that's what I love doing. I love helping people. Yeah. One other story comes to mind. It was at Mass. It was the first time I had taken Megan to Mass on my own, and my husband wasn't, he wanted me to wait to have someone because it's like driving an ambulance. And I felt the Lord was calling me. He said, please wait till I get home. We can go to Mass tonight. I said, nope, God is calling me to Mass today. So I loaded her up and I brought her to Mass. And I was standing in the back. I couldn't even sit because I was so nervous. And I started to cry because I didn't realize all the school children were going to be there. And that was really sad for me. It was really hard to see the healthy children with little bows in their hair and their friends. And I thought, Megan is so alone. She doesn't have any friends. And that really broke my heart. So I was crying in the back. And during the consecration, again, the Lord spoke to me. During the consecration, when the chalice was lifted, Jesus appeared next to Megan, actually. Megan was to my right. And when the priest spoke the words, the consecration to the blood of Christ, Jesus spoke to me and he said, Ellen, because my cry was, I'm so alone, I'm lonely, I'm all by myself, I have no one to be with me, help me. And he said, Ellen, I have shed my blood for you. I will never leave you. So anyone out there that's suffering, Christ shed his blood for you. And you have one friend, and really that's the only one you need. And his mother. And then the angels and saints and everyone will come around and wrap you.
Follow. That's
powerful.
Too much crying on the show, Ellen. Too many
God's
shed
work.
tears. God, Jesus sheds blood and we shed our tears. What are you hoping? Is there a particular group that you want to reach? Is there a particular talk you want to give? Is there someone that you really want to reach out to that's on your heart, or you're just called as people reach out to you?
I'm called when people reach out to me. I do love going to the schools. I've spoken at medical conferences, women's conferences, marriage. My husband and I have given marriage talks to how do you hold a marriage together when you're suffering.
That's a good question.
So we've done, yes. And then my 16-year-old is a speaker, a pro-life speaker, because she was almost died before she was born. And that's a whole nother miracle that we have to share. And so her and I share the story together. Any age, I want people to call and contact me so that I can share with all ages. There are no limitations to where I'll go. Any faith, any group. I just want to help save souls, even if it's just a few people, or I've spoken to thousands of people.
You may never know, and it's not for you to know.
It's not for me to know.
But you know what, I want to go back to that marriage question, because comment you made, because all of us who have married know it's tough already, being married, whether you have no children, healthy children, children with special needs. How do you do that? What is your message to couples who struggle and maybe dealing with a child who has disabilities?
Well, first of all, we would be happy to do any one-on-one counseling with anyone. But my husband has a beautiful soul. He is the most incredible man out there. And, he speaks to the men on how to be a pillar in the home, in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. And we think when we take our wedding vows, it's, in sickness and health for each other. It's really for your children as well, in our eyes, and all those people that God places in your path. So, just surrendering and couple prayer to pray together. We pray as a family. We have groups come to our house often, and we pray the rosary, have a snack, and talk about the faith. So really encompassing the community and reaching out to men, and my children have guided other families with, sisters, brothers. So we have the whole package,
It'd be good for the
offer.
men's group.
Be great for the men's group, right?
For our men's group. We have a men's group at ECRC. That'd be great.
Yeah,
He's a beautiful soul, very
I
connected
think it's
to the
important
Lord.
too, because I was actually going to ask, what if there's, because I've heard this come up recently on our, we host a marriage retreat every year, and there was a couple on the retreat where the wife had an abortion and didn't tell the husband, and he found out, or like she did it without his consent.
Was it his baby? Like while they were married?
Yeah, they were married, but she was done having kids. She didn't want any more. And then he was having such a hard time forgiving her. And then I heard of a different marriage where they did get divorced because he had forced her. So the question becomes, when they're on different pages, so say, I got pregnant and the kid with special needs, and my husband was like, no, he would never. But say he was like, no, I don't want a special needs child. We're not keeping this child. Where do you come to terms with that when maybe I'm pro-life, or maybe the wife is pro-life, or maybe the other way around, maybe the husband is like, I want this child, and the wife says I don't want it. In any situation, whether it's, you're done having kids, or whether it's a diagnosis of special needs, just getting on that same page with your spouse.
So at that point, I would really recommend that they seek professional counseling, and a counselor that would be a Catholic counselor, Christian counselor, to really be able to help them as a couple, professional help, and really to seek a priest or a bishop or a deacon. I would definitely contact someone in the church that can really help heal their marriage and move their marriage forward and choose life for that child.
I've heard there's like post-abortion retreats for couples too.
There are.
So that's probably important
Yes,
too.
and those are very powerful.
Yeah.
That would be a great recommendation.
Yeah.
Definitely some professional help.
Professional help. So
Yes.
Yeah. It's a tough
That's
situation.
that is really tough.
There's times when you disagree with your husband on what to have for dinner, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
Those are
Those are
conversations that
good.
you almost need to have in premarital classes.
Yeah.
Because you get married, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into, what
That's a great
God has
suggestion.
planned for you. And to go over all these situations, how many kids do you want? What happens if we accidentally have 7? You know what I mean? Or we have a child with special needs, or we're told in utero that our baby's going to be Down syndrome, or, those are conversations you need to have and get on the same page.
And the doctors are so wrong many times.
Oh, they are wrong a lot.
So wrong.
Because they're taking in consideration, Down syndrome, the only thing they could do is the amniocentesis to really be 100%, and then you risk losing the baby anyway. So, but when they do those testing, you really have to ask questions because they're basing it on your age, not scientific, right? So they're like, oh, well, you're in your 40s, you have this much greater chance of having a Down syndrome baby. Well, it doesn't mean your baby's going to be Down syndrome. And if the baby is, it's okay. The baby still has value, and God wanted that baby to be born. You know what I mean? Or He wouldn't have given it to you.
And, beautiful life.
God knows you before you're even in your mother's womb. So you have to trust God that baby was intended, to be born. Yeah, so those are all tough decisions as spouses, and I love it that you guys give talks to couples, because we forget that part of it all. You're still a husband and a wife. You still have to have that relationship. And even though Megan takes a lot of your time, you still have to remain that.
Oh, we work really hard at keeping the other children, the main focus.
Yeah.
Too. And they've never once complained. They pour it out. They're in there kissing Megan and loving her up and kind of shooing us out a little bit, like, hey, I got my turn. They're just like in her face all the time.
Yeah.
She adores them.
How has it changed their lives?
Tremendously. This comes at a great cost. There are things that they have painfully watched other families, go on vacation, which we can't do. Financial stresses in the home, and they've held their heads up high, though. I know that there's probably been some tears, or with certain situations, but they know God's love, and I think sometimes it's the culture is teaching them one thing, and so once in a while they might ponder on that. They don't really say anything to me about that, but it's brought us closer, and a lot of people email them or call them or, reach out to them and say, gosh, your family is exceptional and they're doing this work. We're like, we're really not, again, exceptional. We're just very, very ordinary. So, but it's a gift to have siblings for her too. And some people that have a special needs child, they don't continue on to have siblings. And the best gift you can give your child, if you're, God chooses you, you can have more children and not stop with a special needs child, and certainly not harm the special needs child.
So for people to understand, in addition to Megan's disability, it's very difficult to travel with her, even out just locally, right? To take her out of the house, or?
Well, it is. It takes about 2 hours to load her up, to get her in her chair and to get all of her secondary medical equipment. So we have 2 and 3, car batteries that we travel with, and her ventilator and her feeding. So we do get her loaded up every single day and take her outside in the nice weather and take her on walks, take her to do different things. We take her out shopping and we take her to local events, and
But it's a lot of prep time.
It's a lot of prep time, right? But well worth it. Because then she can save more souls. She can get out and, walking a little girl in a wheelchair around gives us the opportunity to share God's work.
Do people come up to you and talk to you? Or are they curious, like just strangers?
They do.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a really nice comment, and sometimes it's not so nice.
Really? Just strangers?
Right with Megan right there.
Are you serious?
They will devalue her life right in front of us.
Wow, that's incredible. Like just strangers. Wow. What is your response to them? Do you say a little prayer before you stop?
I always say a prayer. That I use the words that the Holy Spirit gives me.
Because you'd have to
with
guide
charity and mercy and love, and they walk away a changed person. And almost always they thank me for teaching them that I never thought about that, and thank you for taking the time. I don't really let them off easy. I mean, if they're going to say something and
if they're going to be
degrade
bold,
Megan in front of her, then I'll teach them. But with charity, and you can't change everyone, but if you can plant the seed.
it's okay. Maybe that was God's calling to change their soul and save their soul.
I almost appreciate it. If they're feeling it, they might as well say it so that I can teach them.
Yeah. Well, Ellen, again, before we let you go, thank you so much for being here and sharing this story with us. And
Such a pleasure to meet you. I know she met you, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What can you give out the website again for people who maybe do want to email a prayer or a request to Megan? And what do you want to share? And somebody who maybe wants to have you speak?
That would be wonderful. They can reach me at megansmiracles.com, and it's MEGHANS, miracles.com. I'm also a member of Catholic Speakers Organization on catholicspeakers.com, where my full profile, all the talks that I give, there's some video clips on there. They can always call me as well at 313-414-3359.
Thank you so much.
So anyway, I can help other people, it'd be my pleasure.
Thank you. What an important pro-life message. Thank you so much for sharing that. Stay with us, everyone. Patricia and I are going to continue this conversation here on An Invitation to Sisterhood. We'll be right back. Welcome back to An Invitation to Sisterhood. We've been talking about pro-life issues with Ellen Salter, who's a pro-life speaker and the mother of the beautiful Megan from Megan's Miracles. And I love Ellen's perspective on the pro-life and her message.
Yeah, her joy, her surrender. It was really powerful. I didn't know all of her visions, and the Lord had come to her. And I mean, she was very, I'm speechless. I mean, it was good. It was beautiful to hear.
And powerful messages. I didn't even think about the aspect of being a husband and wife. I mean, you think about that of a mother and taking care of your child with special needs, but you forget they are a couple. They're a husband and wife, and they need that time and nurturing their own relationship so they can continue their journey as parents, and they have 3 other children. And their involvement.
And I've been reading a book about the transformative power of motherhood, and it's very beautiful, and it just says how we are all called to become more humble, to die unto ourselves when we're raising children, and how much more she gets to experience that. And I loved the way she said, I was humbled that the Lord asked me to take on a special needs child. I mean, people always have the opposite perspective. You know, I have a friend who had a Down syndrome child last year, and everybody said, "Oh, poor baby, poor mom, poor mother. She has 3 other children," and they all just had this deep pity for her as a mother.
Like
that
they're
she has-
mourning it.
Yeah, that she has a special needs child, and I've heard some sad stories too about how other adults react to her daughter too. So I think it's beautiful the way that Ellen has that peace about it. You know,
And a message, how powerful the message that her life has value. I mean, I unfortunately know too many stories of people who have had children or were told that they were having a child with special needs and family wanted them to abort the baby. Another family who had children with special needs and the family said you should never take her out in public. Why are you even showing her to the public? I mean, these misperceptions or these being of the world, you know what I mean? Instead of, you know, I'm in the world, but I'm not of the world. It's you become so part of the world that you forget God's purpose.
exactly. And then the Lord wants to use you. And I loved her also, her surrender to being, I said, you know, how about women that aren't equipped? And she's like, I'm not equipped. You know, humility, she said, you're telling us how she wasn't equipped, but the Lord equipped her. And so any one of us could encounter any amount of suffering. I mean, we, thank God that you and I have healthy children, but who knows what the Lord has in store for us in the future. Maybe not with our children, but in something else. In other ways, we're it's not if you suffer, but when you suffer. You know,
and it's with all of us. And finding that joy, I think that's the hardest. And surrendering, I think is tough for all of us. I could tell you it's been tough for me in a lot of circumstances. But every time that I surrender, everything works out.
Right.
I mean, I could tell you moments in my life where I said, okay, God, this one's on you. Because I can't figure it out. I don't have the answer. And then it all comes together.
It does.
It may be as simple as figuring out what to do with the business or, you know, wanting to have children, or there's so many different moments I could think of in my life where I really just gave out to God and it falls into place. Because you can't do this without Him. I don't know how people are going through this life. Really, I don't know. And I think that's why there's lack of joy. That's why there's euthanasia. That's why somebody who is a diabetic, you know, having an amputated leg would rather die than just live with an amputated leg. That they didn't see value.
Because the quality of life is
changed.
Isn't what it would be if you had your full person, but there's just any number of things. And your suffering could just be a headache, you know, and whatever it is, just uniting that suffering with the suffering of Jesus on the cross. And then, and then her vision that she had also when she was in Mass, when the Lord said, I gave you my blood, I died for you. I mean, that's powerful. That's
and I'll never leave you.
And
that's what real true joy comes in. You could see somebody's relationship with the Christ by the joy on their face. Really? And you really don't, I mean, even Jesus says pray in private. And you know, you're suffering in private, show joy to the world, you know, it's between you and I. And that's where He really has your back, I think. But as always, as I was saying to Pratis and we say to you, we take away so much from this show. And we want to leave you with messages and call to action. So we're going to share with you, as always, our pledges.
I pledge to surrender my life to Jesus Christ when I find myself in great fear. I pledge to find joy in suffering. I pledge to find my own journey to the heart of Christ.